Hey, what's up there? I've been getting a lot of questions recently about Dexedrine, or the generic name dextroamphetamine. So I'm getting a lot of questions about people who, number one, have never heard of it and are wondering why they haven't heard of it, and number two, from people who know about it and are trying to get it and are wondering why they're having such a difficult time in doing that when people will readily give them Adderall and Vyvanse. So the answer is the simple and the obvious one, it's money. And I'm going to break down that reason into three areas just to help you get a better understanding of what's going on and how these things work. So, number one, they don't market it because it's off patent. Number two, prescribers get money to prescribe these things. Number three, and I'm going to spend most of my time on that because that's the one that you're going to deal with the most. And number three, they run negative advertising against the older drugs, including Dexedrine. So we'll begin with number one. Number one is pretty self-explanatory. Dexedrine is no longer on patent, and that's really the point of the Adderall versus Vyvanse video. The reason that Adderall and Vyvanse exist is because you can't continue to patent the same thing. The patent expired, so what they did is they came up with new mixtures and new ways of adding things onto the compound in order to repatent the drug. It's not to improve the drug in any way, it's just to do little things to it to make it repatentable. So you're trying to sell people the same thing. So you mix it with stuff and you make small modifications to it so that you can sell it again, and that's what Adderall is. Adderall is 75% Dexedrine, 25% levoamphetamine, which is the mirror image of dextroamphetamine or Dexedrine. So since it's a new mixture, you can repatent that. And Vyvanse is Dexedrine bonded to an amino acid, and once it goes in your body, the amino acid comes off, and what are you left with? You're left with Dexedrine. So it's exactly the same drug. So you're just repatenting it. So that's a pretty self-explanatory reason. The second one, which I'm going to spend the most time on because it's going to be the one that is most relevant to people's questions out there, so I don't want to keep repeating myself. Prescribers get money to write these things, and it's not a lie. It happens, and I'm going to prove it to you. And what I'm going to do is just give an example. There are doctors who do videos on YouTube as well, who do Adderall versus Vyvanse. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show a video where a doctor gives a presentation on Adderall versus Vyvanse, and he doesn't mention Dexedrine or dextroamphetamine at all. I'm going to do that on this side. You watch that link. Each one of these videos is going to be about 2 minutes. They're really short. So watch that one. I'll put that one here. And then the other one is going to be one that does mention it. And there's only one real difference between the two, and I'll show that to you at the end, okay? And they say basically the same thing, and I really want to show these two videos because these are very good examples of the type of consultation that you have likely received when you've gone to the doctor's office and said, you know, I've heard about Adderall, I've heard about Vyvanse, I've heard about dextroamphetamine, or, you know, I'm interested in stimulant medications that are like these. You know, what are my options? These are very likely to be along the, you know, in the avenue of what kind of thing you're going to hear when you go to a doctor's office when they explain to you the difference between the drugs. And you're going to notice that some mention it and most don't, though. And that's really going to address the people who are wondering why they haven't heard of it. And the reason, again, is just money. And number three, they run negative advertising against the older drugs. So once a drug has gone off patent, you can't make any more money off of it. And as I said before, Adderall, Vyvanse, dextroamphetamine, they're all more or less the same drug. Adderall is much more, is the most different out of all of them because it has levoamphetamine, which is a completely different compound, has different effects. It has effects on the peripheral nervous system. That's why you have more heart palpitations, more vasoconstriction, and you just, you know, you feel more cracked out, basically. So, basically what you're doing here is once the patent of one of them runs out, it can't really make you that much more money. So you come out with a new drug. Let's say you've got Dexedrine, patent ran out, now you come out with Adderall, which is basically just a variation of the same drug. It's repackaging the same drug. So now what you need to do is you need to convert the people who are happy on Dexedrine to Adderall. So what you do is you run negative advertising against it. And if you want examples, all you have to do is just search the drug on the internet. You can search it on YouTube even. You're going to see all kinds of videos or, you know, news articles and things like that. Is Dexedrine dangerous? Is it addictive? Is it this? Is it that? And you won't see it for the newer drugs. Like Vyvanse. So what you'll notice as well is, the time frame of most of those videos is going to be about the time that Dexedrine's patent expired and Adderall came onto the market. And now you're starting to see the same sort of thing for Adderall. If you search Adderall just on YouTube now all of a sudden you're going to start seeing, all kinds of videos that are like, are college students abusing Adderall? Is it dangerous? Is, yada, yada, yada. Is it bad for you? And what you'll notice is that most of those started coming out, pretty much all of them, started coming out at about the time Adderall's patent expired and Vyvanse was coming out. Now, if you search Vyvanse, you're not going to see those same kind of videos, even though it's basically the same. And it doesn't have to make any sense. So if you look at some of the old Dexedrine, negative advertising campaign videos, a lot of the complaints are, is it safe? There was a child who died on it. It's safe for your heart. But the new drug that came out, Adderall, in the wake, remember, Dexedrine is just dextroamphetamine. It's 100% dextroamphetamine. Adderall is 75% dextroamphetamine, 25% levoamphetamine. And levoamphetamine has much more effect on the peripheral nervous system, and including your heart and the vasoconstriction and stuff like that, than Dexedrine. Dexedrine mainly just affects your mind, your central nervous system. So if people were really worried about the negative effects of Dexedrine, Adderall is way worse. It would be even worse for your heart. It's going to, because it has all those effects that Dexedrine has, plus a whole bunch of unnecessary heart side effects that Dexedrine does not have. So it's everything Dexedrine does, plus a whole bunch of other stuff as well. So it doesn't make any sense from that perspective, but that's not the point. The whole point is you want to convert people from Dexedrine to Adderall. And if they think that Adderall may potentially be somewhat safer, you don't have to prove that it is at all, and you don't even have to say anything. You just run negative advertising for one and don't for the other. And people will convert. And now you're seeing the same thing with Vyvanse as they run the negative advertising against Adderall. And the reason they do that is just because it's smart. If I would do exactly the same thing. If my sole purpose, if I owned that company, was just to make as much money as possible, that's exactly what I would do, because it's a smart business decision. So now what we'll do is we'll look at each video, and then I'll explain a little bit more about it. Make sure you watch each one of those videos, and then come back here, and we'll discuss them a little bit more. So I'll see you then.
Welcome back. So you finished watching those videos. Here's the first video where the guy does not mention Dexedrine at all. Here's the second video where they mention it a few times. And actually, on a little side note here, have a look there. So you see what I'm talking about? But anyways, let's continue. So the main difference here is what I'm about to show you is money. So here's a guy, doesn't mention it. Here's a guy that does. What's the difference? They both say more or less the same thing. If you look at the first guy, if I look him up in Dollars for Docs, which is a ProPublica website, they've got, it's not really that complete. They only follow like 20 or 30 companies basically out of the thousands of companies that are out there. But what it will do is help us get an idea of what's going on. So you look up his name in there, and you'll start noticing payments like these: $5,000, $13,000, $4,000, $4,000, $8,000, $16,000, $35,000, $6,000, a few ones, $5,000, $34,000, and it goes on some more. $25,000, $52,000, and it stops there. So you can see that a lot of money is being paid out here, and you're going to start to notice a correlation between people and institutions that are getting big payments like this, $50,000 at a time, and those who you don't find in there. So the second guy, I look him up in the ProPublica system, and I find a guy with his name, but I'm pretty sure that's not him because he said he was from New Jersey. But either way, it's $61. It's basically nothing. So you look at the difference here. Some guy mentions it several times, and of course some people might say, well, maybe the first guy didn't mention Dexedrine at all because it's an Adderall versus Vyvanse. It's not Dexedrine versus Vyvanse. Well, that's true, but I'd really relate it to, I'd really put it to you this way. Imagine there is a restaurant, and you advise someone to go there, but there's a dress code. Are you going to tell them about the dress code or not? If you don't tell them about it, they're going to go there, they're going to get turned away. Do you think they're going to be mad at you when they come back? They're going to be like, hey man, why didn't you mention there's a dress code? Like, oh, you didn't ask. They're like, what are you going to say? You're like, come on, bro, quit jerking me off. That was bullshit. That's exactly what you're going to say, right? So, that's what this guy does. I mean, obviously he mentions it, once or twice, but he really doesn't want to get into it because, as you look in my video, as soon as you start talking about it, then you've got to get into a long explanation. He clearly didn't want to do that, but you really have to mention it. You just have to do it, basically. Otherwise, if you want to be honest, anyways. So, and again, just because I didn't find this guy in the system here doesn't mean he's not there. I mean, he probably is not there, but there are a lot of ways around the system. I mean, I'll give you an example. A lot of you who go to schools have an especially hard time getting Dextran and Amphetamine. In fact, most of the people who tell me they're having difficulty getting Dexedrine are people who go to school. And the main reason for that is and it's not because Dexedrine is hard to get. As you saw there are plenty of doctors who are willing to prescribe and write for it. I used to work at an insurance company. I've done thousands of claims for Dexedrine. They happen all the time. Every single day I get one. So it's not uncommon at all. But I know it's harder at schools because the pharmaceutical companies, instead of paying the doctors there, because a lot of the doctors there are students anyways in training, they're not going to be getting paid by anyone. What they do is they pay the schools, or make a charitable contribution, whatever you want to call it. Pay the school, and then what the school does is they set up policies. So the kind of problems you've been running into, where they say, we just don't prescribe that, and then when you ask why, they just say, we just don't do it. You pick Adderall or Vyvanse, and they're going to try to get you on Vyvanse, right? So that's one way to do it. And there are plenty of doctors who don't do their own practice anymore, and what they do is they work for some other place, some other practice employs them, and they don't get paid. I mean, they can get paid directly by pharmaceutical companies, but often what the place will do is the pharmaceutical company, same thing, will come into this company that has a bunch of primary care physicians. They'll say, listen, set it up the same way, and basically the same sort of thing happens, where it's just, we have a policy where this is what we prescribe for. But of course, there's just nothing wrong with the drug at all. It's just money. As I showed you, it's just money. You're going to start to notice that correlation. People who are getting paid a lot of money by different pharmaceutical companies, they're going to fail to mention things. Both of those guys tell, everything they say is factual. Just one leaves out a lot of information. One told you about the dress code, one didn't tell you about the dress code. That's the difference. So I hope you found this helpful. If you have any comments, leave them below. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.